Is this the beginning of a global economic realignment that could leave America behind? What happens when the world's largest economy loses its biggest trading partner in three critical industries: agriculture, technology, and energy? Right now, China is pulling back on imports from the United States, creating a ripple effect that could bring the American economy to its knees. From farms in Iowa to tech hubs in Silicon Valley, this is a crisis that affects us all. Why is this happening? And can America survive this seismic shift? The United States and China account for over 40% of global GDP, making their trade relationship one of the most critical in the world. In 2022, bilateral trade between the two nations hit $690 billion, with China serving as a key buyer of American agricultural goods, semiconductors, and energy resources. But here's the existential problem. China's imports of U.S. goods have been declining steadily since 2018. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, Chinese imports of U.S. products dropped by 17% in 2023 compared to pre-trade war levels. This is devastating for sectors like agriculture, where China once purchased nearly 60% of America's soybean exports. Dr. Chad Bown, a senior fellow at the Peterson Institute for International Economics, warns that this isn't just about trade figures. It's about how deeply interconnected industries are. Losing China as a buyer sends shockwaves through supply chains, employment, and innovation. This economic unraveling can be traced back to the U.S. China Trade War, which began in 2018. The Trump administration imposed tariffs on $360 billion worth of Chinese goods, and Beijing retaliated with tariffs on $110 billion worth of U.S. exports. Agriculture, technology, and energy were among the hardest hit sectors. A report by the National Bureau of Economic Research found that during the trade war's peak, U.S. exports to China fell by nearly 20%. Beijing didn't just retaliate. It restructured. The Chinese government started diversifying its supply chains, turning to Brazil for soybeans, Europe for technology partnerships, and Russia for energy. In an op-ed for the Financial Times, economist Yu Yongding stated, "The trade war accelerated China's push for self-reliance. This wasn't a temporary response, it's a long-term strategy." Please like and subscribe. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us grow. Thank you. The idea behind tariffs was to pressure China into buying more U.S. goods. But instead, they made American products more expensive and less competitive in global markets. For instance, soybeans, one of the largest U.S. exports to China, saw a price drop of over 18% in 2018 because Chinese buyers pivoted to Brazil. The American Farm Bureau reported that between 2018 and 2020, U.S. farmers lost an estimated $14 billion in export revenue due to tariffs. Tariffs acted as a tax on U.S. businesses and consumers, explained Mary Lovely, a trade economist at Syracuse University. Instead of incentivizing trade, they disrupted supply chains and forced China to look elsewhere. So, what sectors have been hit the hardest? Let's break it down. Agriculture has been the hardest hit sector in this economic downturn, largely because of its reliance on China as a key buyer. In 2022, China purchased over $35 billion worth of U.S. agricultural products, down from $45 billion in 2017. Soybeans, corn, and pork were among the most affected commodities. For farmers in the Midwest, this decline has been catastrophic. Farm bankruptcies in states like Iowa and Nebraska increased by 23% during the trade war's peak, according to the American Farm Bureau Federation. Many family-owned farms already operating on thin margins were forced to shut down. John Heisdorfer, an Iowa soybean farmer and former president of the American Soybean Association, described the situation as dire. Losing China as a customer isn't just a loss of revenue, it's a loss of stability. It's hard to plan for the future when your largest buyer disappears. Brazil stepped into the gap left by U.S. farmers with strategic precision. In 2022, Brazil exported a record 87.6 million metric tons of soybeans to China, capturing over half of the market share. This dominance wasn't accidental. Brazil benefits from lower production costs, favorable trade agreements, and a currency advantage. Moreover, China has invested heavily in Brazilian infrastructure, including railways and ports, to streamline the transport of agricultural goods. China and Brazil have developed a symbiotic relationship, noted Marcelo Vieira, president of the Brazilian Agribusiness Association. Brazil provides the raw materials, and China provides the capital to move them. The economic fallout from reduced agricultural exports goes far beyond the farms. Entire rural communities depend on the success of agriculture, from equipment manufacturers to logistics companies. When farms lose income, so do the businesses that serve them. A University of Illinois study found that every $1 lost in farm income results in a $2.87 reduction in local economic activity. For rural towns in the Midwest, this means fewer jobs, school closures, and declining populations. This is a death spiral for some communities, warned Megan Nelson, an economist at the American Farm Bureau Federation. Without a robust farming economy, the social fabric of rural America is at risk. The semiconductor industry has been hit hard in this trade war. Semiconductors, often referred to as the new oil, are the foundation of modern technologies, from smartphones to artificial intelligence. The United States has historically led the semiconductor industry, with giants like Intel, Nvidia, and Qualcomm driving innovation. However, China is aggressively working to close this gap, and its pivot away from U.S. semiconductor imports marks a significant escalation in the technological Cold War. In 2023, U.S. chip exports to China fell by 14%, according to the Semiconductor Industry Association. This drop isn't merely economic, it's strategic. Beijing's Made in China 2025 initiative aims to produce 70% of its semiconductors domestically by 2025. To achieve this, China has poured billions into research, development, and manufacturing capabilities. China views its dependence on foreign semiconductors as a vulnerability, explained Dan Wang, a technology analyst at Gavical Research. They're treating chip production as a matter of national security, which explains the urgency and scale of their investments. This shift has broad implications for the global tech landscape. As China builds its semiconductor capacity, it is simultaneously reducing demand for US-made chips, creating a new level of competition in an already high-stakes industry. The survival of U.S. tech companies in the face of China's drive for self-sufficiency depends on their ability to innovate and adapt. Companies like Qualcomm, Micron, and Broadcom have already reported revenue losses due to reduced Chinese demand. Qualcomm, for instance, saw its China revenue fall by over 15% in 2023. Moreover, U.S. export restrictions on advanced chip technologies designed to curb China's progress have had mixed effects. While they slow China's access to cutting-edge technologies, they also incentivize Beijing to double down on domestic innovation. Export controls are a double-edged sword, noted Scott Kennedy, a senior advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. They may give U.S. companies a short-term advantage, but they also force China to accelerate its technological independence. To remain competitive, U.S. firms are lobbying for federal support. The CHIPS Act, signed into law in 2022, allocated $52 billion to boost domestic semiconductor manufacturing. While this is a step forward, experts warn that the U.S. must maintain its edge in innovation to stay ahead. Energy is another critical area where China has reduced its reliance on the United States. In 2021, the U.S. was a leading supplier of liquefied natural gas to China. By 2023, those exports had declined by 25%, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. The reasons for this shift are both geopolitical and economic. Following the Russia-Ukraine conflict, China deepened its energy ties with Russia, signing a 30-year agreement for natural gas imports via the Power of Siberia pipeline. Additionally, China has secured long-term LNG deals with Qatar, including a $60 billion agreement signed in early 2024. China is strategically diversifying its energy suppliers to reduce geopolitical risks, explained Michal Maiden, director of the China Energy Program at the Oxford Institute for Energy Studies. They want to ensure a stable supply chain while avoiding over-reliance on any one country. For U.S. energy companies, this decline in Chinese demand represents a significant loss. The EIA reported a 22% drop in LNG export revenues in 2023, with ripple effects on the broader energy sector. Well, China's diversification strategy is fundamentally altering global trade dynamics. By reducing its dependence on the United States, Beijing is building stronger ties with emerging markets and regional partners. For instance, China's trade with Brazil surpassed $150 billion in 2023, making Brazil its largest trading partner in South America. The Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCE, a trade agreement that includes China and 14 other countries, has also reshaped the global trade landscape. RCEP nations now account for 30% of global GDP, with intra-Asian trade growing by 8% in 2023 alone, according to the World Trade Organization. Jennifer Hillman, a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations, warned, "The United States risks being sidelined in global trade if it doesn't adapt. China is positioning itself as the center of a new trade order. This realignment has significant implications for the United States, which must find new markets and strengthen alliances to remain competitive." China's reduced reliance on U.S. goods is part of a broader economic strategy aimed at self-sufficiency and global leadership. President Xi Jinping's dual circulation strategy emphasizes domestic consumption while expanding China's influence in international markets. This strategy is reflected in initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative, which has funneled billions into infrastructure projects across Asia, Africa, and Europe. By strengthening trade relationships with developing nations, China is creating a global economic network that reduces its dependence on Western economies. China isn't just reacting to trade tensions, said Eswar Prasad, a professor of international trade policy at Cornell University. It's proactively reshaping the global economic order to align with its long-term ambitions. American industries are scrambling to adapt to the new trade realities. Farmers are seeking new markets in Southeast Asia and Europe, but these regions cannot fully replace China's demand. For example, while soybean exports to Vietnam and Thailand have increased, they still account for less than half of the volume previously sold to China. Tech companies are lobbying for federal support to offset losses. The CHIPS Act is a critical step, but experts caution that rebuilding domestic semiconductor manufacturing will take years. Energy companies, meanwhile, are exploring partnerships in India and Japan, though these markets often demand lower prices, squeezing profit margins. A 2023 report by McKinsey emphasized the scale of the challenge. It could take a decade for U.S. industries to rebuild supply chains and secure new buyers. The question is whether they can remain competitive during that transition. The United States faces an uphill battle in adapting to a world where China is no longer its largest trading partner. Innovation, strategic investments, and diversification will be key. For example, the U.S. is investing in renewable energy technologies to reduce reliance on volatile global markets, and agricultural exporters are exploring partnerships with countries in the Middle East and Africa. However, adaptation requires more than just policy shifts. It demands a cohesive strategy. Adam Posen, president of the Peterson Institute for International Economics, warned, "The U.S. has the resources and talent to adapt, but without a clear vision, it risks losing its competitive edge." The economic decoupling between the U.S. and China is not just a bilateral issue, it's a catalyst for a global realignment. Emerging markets like India, Indonesia, and Nigeria are poised to become new centers of economic activity, and American exporters must pivot to these opportunities to remain relevant. This realignment is both a challenge and an opportunity. As global trade patterns shift, the U.S. has a chance to redefine its role in the world economy. But it will require bold action, strategic alliances, and a willingness to embrace change. Is this the beginning of a multipolar trade world, or will the U.S. reclaim its dominance? The next moves could change everything. The U.S. economy is at a turning point. From struggling farmers in rural America to tech innovators battling for global market share, and energy suppliers searching for new partners. The ripple effects of China's reduced imports are undeniable. These changes aren't just numbers on a balance sheet. They're reshaping the livelihoods of millions and redefining America's place in the global economy. But this isn't the end of the story. How the U.S. adapts to this seismic shift will determine its future economic strength. Will American industries rise to the challenge, or will this be the beginning of a prolonged decline? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We're glad you're enjoying this video. Please like and subscribe. Check out another video that is now on your screen.